one of the reasons I started this group was I would go to the Sunday night gatherings at the center, and so often I would hear the same poets over and over again. And I thought it would be lovely for us to expand the circle of mystical poetry and sacred poetry that we can all share together. And so this is a poet that we have not read before. His name is Fred Lamott, and he's a friend of mine. He's got several books out. He went to Yale Divinity School and to Princeton, and he has been a pastor for several years. He's retired. He lives in Seattle, Washington. And I encountered him on Facebook and just thought that his poetry was some of the best poetry that I was reading anywhere. So I'm going to read some to you. He has a teacher from India, and that teacher is in the Shankaracharya tradition. And he's also studied Christian mysticism. So it's a nice combination, as we love to do here in America, Priya, as you probably know by now. We love to combine things, whether we should or not. This is a poem that I do not have the title to, but I'll just jump in. How will you know her? In between heartbeats, there is a garden, the place where Magdalene touched Jesus. She thought he was the gardener. He thought she was the breath of God, caressing his chest. She was. In between heartbeats, there is a garden, the wilderness where Israel meets wisdom, the Sabbath queen singing of loss. How could they make love in the desert? They pitched a tent of gathered silence, a holy pavilion of animal skins. In between heartbeats, there is a garden where the village girls bring milk pails to meet the prince of herds. Mm-hmm. Each of those girls is his flute, but only one can be his song. If she does not walk with you in the cool of the evening through this very garden between heartbeats, how can you call her your lover? And what are the signs that prove she is betrothed to you? Dear friend, your emptiness turns indigo, fragrant as jasmine. The numb and awkward places in you overflow like awakening breasts with the nectar of yearning. You no longer fear growing hollow as an autumn gourd or floating a leaf upon the night. And when your flesh falls asleep, you fall into prayer, into a kind of wedding with wordless vows, where the bride wears your own inhalation as her luminous veil. She presses the kiss of solitude between your eyebrows, a throbbing pearl of dreamlessness. Instead of slumber, an unwavering flame flows in your spine, burning the oil of bewilderment whose scent is love. In the darkest hour, you cease to ask for any light at all, because the midnight stillness under your breastbone has become a maelstrom of stars. Now you are present to yourself, like the silver in a moonbeam, the sweetness in a mother's milk, and the dignity of this breath, how it gently places the soul in each cell of your body, and it is your lover's secret name. I years ago was at the Sorbonne in Paris, and they were having an exhibit of altar pieces from all over Europe that were about Mary Magdalene. They were all Mary Magdalene paintings. And I had this really overwhelming awakening that Mary Magdalene was critical to Christ's mission in the world, because she reflected that love back to him that he was bringing to us. And in that moment, I understood that, Mira served the same purpose, to reflect Baba's love back to him when I'm sure there were moments where he felt that the cup was empty, and he probably felt some people just weren't, hearing him or seeing him or recognizing the work he was doing, that she was always there to mirror that back for him. So I feel like Mary Magdalene plays a very important role, like Mira.
In the book Mira, Mehamera, the Divine Romance, there are many, many references to Mary Magdalene, and there's also the place where Baba says that Mary Magdalene was Christ's consort. Of course, it wasn't the mother, it was Mary Magdalene. And Mira spoke very, very lovingly of Mary Magdalene always.
Yeah.
Jai Baba.
Yeah, Jai Baba. I think it's an important relationship that sometimes gets glossed over. That the beloved needs that mirror. It's something I think it's so beautiful too. It reminds me of how we all need that that steadfastness in our lives, for someone to look at us and see us and know who we are, and to remind us who we really are. So I can read some more unless somebody would like to has a comment or would like to.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, wasn't it lovely? He's quite fabulous. He's quite fabulous.
Who's the poet?
His name is Fred Lamont.
And where does his background?
He lives in Seattle, Washington. He's still alive. He's in his 70s. He's retired. He's a retired pastor. He does counseling work. He works with Vietnam veterans to help them transition, out of PTSD. He went to Yale Divinity School and Princeton in counseling.
Is he a friend of yours?
He's a friend of a friend. I actually tried to arrange to bring him here to Asheville, but we haven't succeeded at that yet. So I'll read one more, and then if anybody would like to jump in and read a favorite of theirs, we would love that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, pick one. How many of these poems remind me of Baba? It's crazy how much they remind me of Baba. This one is called Finish Drowning. A lover cries for help, but not with words. Prayer is that inner music, but it does not always sing God's name. The hollow of the spine cannot hide love's secret, just as night cannot contain the ocean of stars. What gushes out is a language of sighs and glances, sometimes through the heart, sometimes through a wound. Haven't you felt breath hovering over your crown, longing to anoint the soft spot? Meditation is a churning silence, known only to wraths who let waves have their way. We can't tell whose reflection is shattered and tossed across the waters of abysmal delight. Even the moon is a simile for some other brilliance. Friend, if you're still crying help, you haven't finished drowning. So reminiscent of drown in the ocean of love, right? I'll read one more and then.
Lovely.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Lovely.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, I've never read a bad poem by this man, and that's saying something. This one is called When Your Name Fell, and then I'm going to pass it over to somebody else. When your name fell into my heart, every question in my mind was answered by one breath. The distance was not great from crown to breastbone. Why did the journey take 10,000 lives? All I know is there is a kingdom in my chest now, whose government is the silence of an endless glow, whose boundaries keep circling all others like a conch full of wings and sunsets. When I stand at the center of this radiance, I have no enemies. Everyone I meet is called a friend. The wine stain of your lips, O Lord, is on each forehead. You keep giving your royal power away. Perfect strangers shout to one another, "Come, wanderer, I will be your home." You live in me now. The bread is light. The wine is love. The banquet is here.
Mm.
I know, right? Reminds me so much of Baba's, one of my favorite Baba quotes is, "The people are shouting at each other because their hearts are very far apart."
He certainly sounds like an awakened heart.
Doesn't he?
He's very, very Sufi.
Very Sufi. Yeah. Yeah. Even though his teacher is not a Sufi. Isn't that interesting?
When it's my turn, I wanted to read as an interesting female poet who was a contemporary of Hafez.
Yeah. Jump in, Rainey.
Oh,
Is this a good time?
yes. Yes, and it's got marks in it, so I'll go by my husband's marks. I just discovered this book. I didn't know he had it and read it, of course. When you live with an introvert, you have no idea what they have and what they've read. And you don't know what they know till you say something wrong. Her name is Jahan Malek Khatun, 1324 to 1382. She was a princess and the daughter of Masud Shah, who was the ruler of Shiraz from 1336 to 1339. He didn't live long. He too was assassinated, as everyone seems to be in those days. I'll just read one of the small quatrains first, but then go into what looks to us like a ghazal with a radif, a repeating line. Last night, oh, because it's a moon. Okay, I just oracled that. Last night, my life, my love. Oh, I'm sorry. The translator is Dick Davis.
Mirror of my, can you hold the book up again?
The Mirror of My Heart by Dick Davis. My husband is very keen on his own translations and Dick Davis's translations. My husband's a Farsi scholar, and so he's very keen on Dick Davis's translations. And this book is 1,000 Years of Persian Poetry by Women, a bilingual edition translated by Dick Davis. 1,000 Years of Poetry by Women, very ambitious of Dick Davis. And this particular woman, my husband's quite keen on because she was contemporary with Hafez and knew him quite well personally. Page 51, a quatrain. Last night, my love, my life, you lay with me. I grasped your pretty chin. I saw your sweet lips. I awoke. Page 57. The beauty of this book is it has the Persian on the other page. So someone like Bill can go over various words in other languages he knows as well. I know you think that there are other friends for me than you. Not so. And that apart from loving you, I've other things to do. Not so. Beloved, out of pity, take my hand before I fall. You think the world can give me other loves to cling on to. Not so. You strike me like a harp. You play me like a flute. And now you have the nerve to say that I've had enough of you. Not so. What heavy sorrows weigh me down and crush my abject soul? Could anything be harder than your presence to live through? Not so. Your eyes are languorous and rob my wakeful eyes of sleep. Are any curls as wild as yours, as lovely and untrue? Not so.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Oh, I love the wild curls. Yeah. I had a dream of him once with wild curls coming out of the ocean, and he sang to me. That was some wild curls.
What was the poet on that, Rainey?
This is she's on page 49. Jahan Malek Khatun.
She's at the same time as
Jahan. Jahan, I have to say it in Persian, not
Yes.
Hindi.
Khatun.
Jahan Malek Khatun, Khatun, 1324 to 1382.
I really appreciate you sharing that book with us. I really was trying to find women Persian poets, and all I could find was Lala, and I was really coming up short. So thank you. I'm looking forward to reading that and finding some women Persian poets. Yay! Thank you.
I'll go to page 73 because I oracled it, and it's roses on the flowery moon is the repeating line. Oh, there you go.
Just picked them about an hour ago. They're so
Oh.
fragrant. I wish you could smell them. They're fabulous.
Oh, you have a garden with roses. How wonderful.
Do.
Page 73. 1, 2, 3. This is a 6-couplet ghazal with the radif with roses or roses. Your face usurps the fiery glow and hue of roses. And with your face here, what have I to do with roses? Your ringlets are fragrance and so sweet, my friend. No fragrant rose scent could entice me to seek roses. Besides, the faithless rose's scent will fade, which is a serious drawback in my view of roses. And if the waters of eternal life had touched their roots so that they bloomed anew, these roses, when could they ever form a bud as sweet as your beautiful mouth, which is more trim and true than roses? Oh, swoon. I could swoon over these. They're just, this book was hidden from me. Well, not hidden. It appeared to me from its hiding place.
Do you think your husband might like to come on one evening and read the Farsi while you read the English?
I suppose I could find where he's hiding and ask him.
Yeah.
He's
Pull him
always over there somewhere,
pull him
wherever.
out of his cave and ask him and let me know, because I'd really love to have, when Farishte is on, which she hasn't been on in several months, she would read the Farsi before she would read the English. And it was such a rich experience to hear the languages together.
Right.
So beautiful. And I would love to have that again.
Bill doesn't speak conversational Farsi, but he studied classical Farsi at Austin, Texas. That's his master's. And apparently his accent is superb, but he is something of a linguist, having lived all over the world. And as a diplomatic corps brat, a diplomatic corps kid, several languages there.
You would love that. You've got my email, so let me know. We could maybe
All right.
arrange it ahead of time and announce it so everyone could come in here. I think a lot of people would love that. I think I told this story before, but some of you haven't heard it, but I was at the center one day and a elderly man from Iran was there, and he had a very dog-eared, well-loved copy of Hafez, and he said he wanted to read it to us in Farsi. And I was with Jeff and Annie and several other people. We were having lunch. I thought, oh, that's nice. And he starts reading in Farsi, which of course I cannot understand a word of it. And I just started weeping, and I could not stop crying, and I could not eat my food because I just really needed to, focus on this poetry and the fact that I was so moved by it. And it really struck me so intensely how a native tongue like that can reach you, across the bridges that you wouldn't expect. So, yeah.
I also heard Monty speaking today about lives where we had spoken different languages and how they're still inside us.
Right. Yes.
So maybe that's what's going on for you as well.
Right. I didn't. Yeah, it's funny. That never crossed my mind. The minute you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that makes complete sense. Absolute sense. Yeah. I know when I was 18 years old, I went to Japan to live in a Buddhist monastery, and someone gave me a koto, and I said, "Oh, what is that?" And she goes, "Oh," and she showed me how to play it. And I had this song that had been playing in my head the whole time I was in Japan. I thought I thought it was a song I had made up. I picked out that song note for note. It's a 13-foot long, 11 stringed instrument, and they were like, "We thought you said you had never seen this instrument before." I said, "I swear, I don't even remember what you call it." And they said, "You have just played a very famous song called Sakura, and you played it perfectly." And I was like, "Oh, I knew it was a past life. It was just so clear to me that it was past life." They were completely convinced I was the past life of a famous koto player, and insisted I take koto lessons, which I did terribly at.
And they weren't going to play poker with you.
Well, well, I don't
You
get
got
that.
that joke?
No, she doesn't.
Oh,
No.
sorry. It's a joke that, people who are really good at poker act like they're not good at poker, so they can
Oh,
win all
gotcha.
the
right.
game.
Yeah, that's handy. Yes, so lovely the way those past lives, just come up in between the cracks when you don't expect it or know about it. And I'm sure several people have had that when they've gone to Baba's tomb. I can only imagine. Yeah. I had a very interesting experience. Annie took my poetry book to Baba's tomb, and she said, may I lay your book on Baba's tomb?" I'm like, "Would you? I'll pay you money to do that, So she takes my poetry book and she lays it at Baba's tomb in India. And when she came back, I knew she was going to say to me, "You were there." I knew she was going to say that to me. That's what she said. I said, every time people said, "Go to India to Baba's tomb," I'm like, I don't feel a need to go. We're here at the center. It's so close. It seems very like Baba's sort of everywhere. Why go to India? But then she told me a story. And she told me the story that the women mandali would sing arti in the morning during World War II. Of course, India was neutral, and that they were very aware that there were souls that were being killed and murdered in World War II, that they were finding their way to Baba's, to yet and Dajet, and the Samadhi, and that they were coming there to be purified. And I knew the minute that Annie told me that story, I knew that I had been one of those people who had found my way to the Samadhi after, dying in World War II at the hands of the Germans. And it was just 100% clear to me that that's why she said you were there, and why I've never felt the need to go to Baba's Samadhi, because I was like, been there, been there, done that. No, I'm just kidding.
Are you talking about Annie Fahey?
Kidding. Yes.
So we met Annie in India, and without taking up time here, I'll tell you one of those Kismet stories about us.
Yeah. Yes. So who else would like to read?
Telly should read.
Don't make me call on you.
Rumi.
Did Telly read yet?
Now, I'll read a Brian Darnell.
Yes, please.
He calls this diaphaneity. "There's no choice," he said. "I'm all you've got. Forgo the negotiations. You've no collateral. Forgo the calculations. You're in over your head. There are no inducements to any sort of compromise. It's the falsity of yourself, or the truth of no self. This apparent ephemeral insubstantiality, or the resolute putting of it to a stop. Grab hold of me," he said, "or go around, around, and around, trying to stuff into your empty pockets fistfuls of diaphaneity. Oh, child of God, the dream can't be grasped. All you have to hold on to is Meher Baba."
Wow.
Diaphanously well read.
Yes. Yes. Telly reads so beautifully. Thank you for reading that.
Sure. You know, Angela sends the stuff around that gets read at Artie. And so I've been accumulating some of these, and I really like this one. I've never heard the word diaphaneity, but it is from diaphanous, and not that I know what diaphanous is really about, but
Diaphanous is like silk chiffon, and you could throw it in the air and it would diaphanously flow down in diaphanity because it's so diaphanous. But I too looked and caught myself with diaphanity because I knew diaphanous and diaphanously, so he tripped me over too.
Diaphanous is usually used to describe fabric. Telling fabric that is slightly luminous and that it's not opaque. You can see through it, and there's usually a vibrancy to it.
And often floats. It's
Yeah.
unworldly. It's
Yes, very feminine and light and airy and moving with wind.
I think I commented back when he put it up, well, it's better than having candy cane in your pocket because that would be sticky. So having diaphanity is not as bad as you make it. And he laughed.
It's a good word for sure.
yeah.
There's another Brian Darnell poem that I love his work so much. By the way, for those of you who like the way things connect, Brian Darnell lives in Athens, Georgia. And that is where Coleman Barks lives. And he is the primary Rumi translator and has lived there for the past 40 years. Isn't that interesting? Little town, really little town in Georgia that no one's ever heard of. This one's called Grace Intruded by Brian Darnell. Grace intruded upon my habitual sorrow and marked me for its own. Like a pattern of ink under the skin, like an imperfectly minted coin, a misprinted postage stamp, or a raw diamond selected for its flaws. Plucked like a flower for a vase on a bedside table, like a wild colt, culled from the herd, lassoed, corralled, like a shell found on the beach, or an injured bird unable to pursue its migratory route. I left the broad path for the narrow and the crooked, and now no path at all. Making my way as everyone must who tramps towards the gates without precedent. With a companion who by turns comforts, inspires, fortifies, and illumines the way ahead. O child of God, grace is beyond your ken. To whom much is given, much is required.
Can you read it again?
Yeah. Grace intruded upon my habitual sorrow and marked me for its own. Like a pattern of ink under my skin, like an imperfectly minted coin, a misprinted postage stamp, or raw diamond selected for its flaws, plucked like a flower for a vase on a bedside table, like a wild colt culled from the herd, lassoed, corralled, like a shell found on the beach, or an injured bird unable to pursue its migratory route. I left the broad path for the narrow and the crooked, and now no path at all. Making my way as everyone must who tramps towards the gates without precedent. With a companion who turns comfort, who by turns comforts, inspires, fortifies, and illumines the way ahead. O child of God, grace is beyond your ken. To whom much is given, much is required.
So I have a question. I'm new to poetry, as I've told you about. And we actually got to meet Brian back when we were at the center, because he was with a dear friend of ours that we had met in India. I have been really drawn to song lyrics. Do those count as readable in this group?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely.
So may I read
Lyrics are
one?
lyrics. And,
Yes, please.
lyrics are lyrics.
So this is by a songwriter named Kirtana, who is by all means one of my favorite. And she was asked to write something for Christmas Eve. So it's along that, but it is very impactful for me. Happy birthday, Jesus. Lies and lives have passed since we saw you last at Gethsemane. But you are in our hearts and minds this silent night as we light the light to hold the light to be. We shun the love you offer with your outstretched hand, but we tend to crucify what we do not understand. But truth cannot be shaken, just be taking light. So you rose again as proof before our eyes. Even so on this night, all is not calm, all is not bright. We still have the hungry and we have the poor, and we haven't found the peace of mind that puts an end to war. Good wishes and intentions are the gifts we bring. I wish we had a more substantial offering, but peace on earth, goodwill toward man will have to wait till love can rise above the bonds of hate. We have not ceased since you came, fighting over what you said, fighting in your name. Could you please send another star that could follow through the dark to get a fix on you where you are? I don't know if we'd know you if you came again and you walked and taught among us as you did back then. For all I know, you could be standing next to me. So I'll try to find you in every face I see. May this day be your birthday. May this day be our birthday. May we live as one. May peace take root inside us. May your kingdom come, if not on earth, within our hearts this silent night, as we light the light in hope of light to come.
Mm,
Nice.
mm. Thank you. I love that line. Why do we crucify that which we don't understand?
Mhm.
Oh my
And
God.
I love that you could be standing next to me. So, and that has stayed with me the most. And now that I'm into Baba, because I've loved this song for probably over a decade or so, and I've been to Baba about 8 years, that has really impacted me. Thank you for letting me share.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Who was the singer again, Diana?
Her name is Kirtana. She lives right down the street in Big Sur.
Oh,
Kirtana. Jeff Overton, actually, Jeff and Nan sing one of her songs.
One of her songs was sung at a church that
Oh, no, Elizabeth sings Chris Williamson.
oh, Chris Williamson, yeah.
what was the name of the song again? I'll bring it up tonight.
The
Happy,
offering.
happy birthday,
Oh,
Jesus.
Oh, right. I know.
The
of course.
album is
Of
The
course.
Offering, right?
Yeah. I'll
No,
listen.
the album is Parish Light.
Oh, I don't know.
Diane, would you repeat the line about lights, lighting the light?
Oh, yeah.
But you are in our hearts and minds this silent night as we light the light to hold the light to be.
Do we light
that-
the light to hold the light to be?
Yeah, that's lovely.
And in this, you hear like the behind the silent night chords of the song, because it's kind of a take on that.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, all I did just now was I typed in Happy Birthday Jesus lyrics by Kirtana, and I got that. So I also have something else I want to share that's poetic in a different way. I asked my homeopathic brother, what is a homeopath remedy if you have COVID? And it's thymulene. And for anybody who wants information on how to get it, they can ping me.
Can you spell that?
THYMULINE.
Her brother is highly respected, well-published East Bay area homeopath on an amazing level. I
I'm
mean,
writing it down right now.
right
Yeah,
now.
I didn't know you knew him, Raine. That's so
Oh,
sweet.
yes, and his surname is Dyan's surname.
Yes. Which is Ullman. His name is Dana Ullman. And he does Zoom homeopathics throughout the world.
Yes, and we have his books here. My husband did Ayurveda and
Oh,
studied.
I just got goosebumps.
I know.
I am looking him up.
Please, I can hook
Wow.
you up if need be.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Wow, what an illustrious family you come from there, sister.
I'm sorry to dub you in, Diane. That was cute. She walked right into it. See, I live in Berkeley.
No, I love that. I'm very proud. There's a Jewish word called kvel. I'm very like kvel. I'm very
Kvel?
proud.
Kavel Aras. Can you say Kavel Aras?
Yeah.
Yeah, LRS.
Priya, do you have something you'd like to read?
Sure. I'll read a small stanza. It's one of my favorite poems by Pablo Neruda. It's called Every Day You Play. And there's a particular stanza that somehow at Aarti, it just, comes to me. So I sort of, it's the way I relate to Baba. A long time I have loved the sun, mother of pearl of your body. A long time I have loved the sun, mother of pearl of your body, until I even believe that you own the universe. I will bring you happy flowers from the mountains, bluebells, dark hazels, and rustic baskets of kisses. I want to do with you what spring does with the cherry trees.
Wow.
I think you might have to read that again.
Yeah,
I'll not read it, say
Maybe
it.
like 5 more times.
Say
yeah.
it.
yeah.
You're pulling my leg, right?
No,
Just
we want to
because
hear it
my
again.
first-
We want to hear it again.
A long time I have loved the sun, mother of pearl of your body, until I even believe that you own the universe. I will bring you happy flowers from the mountains, bluebells, dark hazels, and rustic baskets of kisses. I want to do with you what spring does with the cherry trees.
What's the
trees
last
grow.
word? The spring does with the what?
With the cherry trees.
Cherry
The
trees.
cherry trees bloom in the
Cherry
spring season.
trees.
Cherry.
Cherry trees. And does that piece have a title?
No, it's
Yeah.
titled Every Day You Play by
Every
Neruda.
day you play. Thank you. That's so
Can you
lovely.
write that down?
Who's the poet?
Pablo Neruda.
I think she's saying Pablo Neruda.
What's the name of it?
Every day you play.
He was a Chilean poet, wasn't he? That was
Oh,
sought after by the government for standing up against Pinochet, who was murdering lots of people in Chile. You would like him, Diane. He was very involved in social justice in Chile, and his life was really at risk for his poetry because he lived during the time of that ruler called Pinochet, who murdered hundreds of thousands of people in Chile, just brutally murdered them. And Pablo Neruda was really very brave in standing up against him, as many people could not be. He was. So I think you would love his work.
Thank you, Priya. My
Most
poet
welcome.
whisperer.
Thank you. I've been a big fan of this space, and I've been watching your videos on YouTube since September, October last year. It's taken me 9 months to get here.
Oh,
So
well,
it's crazy. And big fan of your poetry too. I've read some of it.
Thank you so much, Priya. I really appreciate that. Dyan has spoken very highly of you, and anybody who can be a bridge to another human being embracing poetry, my hat is off to you. That is a feat that you were able to share that with her. So thank you very much. That means a lot to me. Thank you. I appreciate that. Angela asked me to do this, and I thought I would just do it for, you know, a month or 2 or 3, and here we are we're now in month 16. So I'm just happy to know that someone's listening, because our group is very small. So I always forget that the recordings go out, and you know, I always forget that. So yeah, thank you.
You'll have to tell us one day about the history of the title. Why is it called Poetry Amidst the Storm?
Quiet Amidst the Storm.
Yeah, sorry.
I guess it came because I went on a tour years ago, and I went with a Tapa player, and we you know, I'm really a relatively unknown poet, and I thought, this is crazy. We're going to actually lose money on this, which we did. But I was just shocked at the people who came, and you know, were so like deeply appreciative of us coming. We went to 16 cities in 6 weeks. And I just realized that poetry creates this pool of quiet that we are so profoundly in need of in the world. I really think in America, probably more than a lot of other places. And it just really helped me to understand why, you know, I felt the need to go out and share poetry, which my mind said, don't do that. That's crazy. That's, you know, that's going to cost you money. It just seems to me that we are so in need of that. And I had a friend who was a minister. She was a retired minister. And she said to me, when I have quiet time in the morning, I don't usually pick up a sacred text. I usually pick up poetry. And it just seems like poetry can transform someone's desperation or loneliness or anger more quickly than almost anything I can think of. You know, like in a minute and a half, suddenly you're like, what was I upset about? Why was I upset about that? You know, and when you were immersed in that upset, it just has the power to transform everyone. It doesn't matter who they are, what culture they come from, you know. And I remember my mother, who did not like poetry and did not appreciate that I was an artist, and really begged me to, you know, marry a rich man and that kind of thing. One day I felt inspired to read a Mary Oliver poem to my mother, and I was looking down reading it, and I looked up at my mother's face, expecting her to say something like rolling her eyes and saying, well, let's go have a drink, like just blowing the whole thing off. She was weeping. I said, my God, if poetry can make my mother weep, it can make anybody weep. So I just think there's a real need for poetry, and I think it is the quiet amidst the storm, you know. And we are in a storm, as everybody knows. We're in a terrible storm. We're in a maelstrom. We're in a tsunami. And I believe poetry really has the power to soften people's hearts and remind us of what is of value and what is important, when it's so easy in the day to lose sight of that.
Can I piggyback on Priya's question?
Yes.
You also call the title, this is mystic poetry.
Yeah.
Why? What's the mystic part of it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I have a really adequate answer. If anybody has a good answer for that, you know, feel free to jump in here, because I feel like I might not answer this question very well. But one of the things I have been studying spirituality since I was 14 years old, and I'm 61. And right around the time I hit 45 years old, I said to myself, I never want to read a spiritual book again the rest of my life. It just seemed to me like it was saying the same thing over and over again. And I really was like, I get it. I just get what this is about. Done reading books about it. I just want to live my life and see if I can integrate that wisdom and that knowledge. And when I started to read poetry, in particular, when I started to read Hafez, Baba's favorite poet, I just said, oh, here is something that illuminates the way that spiritual texts illuminate and remind us of what is important, but it's not heavy hitting. It's not like you should be doing this and this is the way it is. It was more like, here is this bouquet of words that emits this fragrance, and see if you can smell it and see if you can come into the garden with me. And it was such a gentle kind of invitation that I felt, the poet, John O'Donoghue, who was a Irish poet who died about 15 years ago, said he felt like the soul was essentially very shy, and that this very overt way of lassoing the soul could often make the soul run, that it was really much more of a quiet kind of dialogue. And I have come to believe that that is true. Like, for me, that is true. Maybe it's because I'm an introvert or who knows, but I think poetry has that kind of delicacy to it, and it meets everybody where that person is. So it's not didactic, it's more of an invitation. And I think there's something about that that is really unique to poetry.
And mystical.
And therefore mystical, because it's not trying to tell you what to think or how to think, or you should think this way. It's more saying, here is something of value, see what you think. How do you feel about this? Does this resonate with you? And so it seems to me that poetry bypasses the mind and goes directly to the heart. And that is where mysticism seems to lie, in that beautiful place where Fred Lamont in that poem said, one day I woke up and I realized that I have no enemies. I mean, that's a profound statement. Who feels that way? Not many people. That's a mystery, to say I have no enemies, in this world today. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of that beautiful story that, one of Baba's disciples gave all of his jewelry away to donate it to Baba's work, and his family, who were very wealthy, kidnapped that disciple of Mir Baba. He wasn't a Mandali. Kidnapped him, kept him in a small room for 2 years, would not let him out. The man was married and had children, would not let him out, demanded that he rescind his inheritance so that they could have it, because they did not want Baba to have it. So he did, because he was literally dying in the room. So finally they let him out. He died a year later. Mir Baba said to the widow of this man and his daughter, I want you to go and take care of your husband's siblings who are now dying and in need of help. They are the ones who did that to him. I want you to go and take care of them in their old age. And they did it.
That was Khorshid, Priya.
Khorshid.
Khorshid.
Yeah. And I just thought, that's mystery in a nutshell. Complete mystery in a nutshell. It defies rational thinking. And I think poetry often defies rational thinking, but it still has something to say that the heart understands,
Yeah, my mother forgave all sorts of dreadful things that happened to her as a child and teen by becoming a poet, a poetess as it was called then. And she just saved herself. She just didn't go back there. She just kept writing poetry and raising the perfect daughter, who ran away with Maya Baba as a teen. But anyway, poetry saved her from any sort of bitterness and just stuff you wouldn't believe. Yeah. And it's like that. You transcend with it.
What's interesting is one day when I started writing poetry, which was just 12 years ago, I started suddenly realizing how many people with mental illness were entering my life. And I thought, what's happening? And I did not like it at all. And I realized that because I was writing poetry, I was attracting people who were really broken, who needed to hear poetry, like really broken. And then I started talking to some other poets about that. And I said, do you think that really great poetry comes from great suffering? And they were like, yeah. And they started listing all the great poets that they knew and the deep and profound suffering that person had gone through. Mary Oliver, perfect example. The most well-read poet in the United States was, she was sexually abused by her father as a child. and didn't feel comfortable telling her mother until she could
Yeah.
escape. You know, that's profound suffering. And Rumi, you know, who was so renowned and so well thought of and so respected, did not begin to write poetry until Shams of Tabriz, his heart companion, was murdered by his disciples and his son out of jealousy. That is when Rumi started writing poetry, out of that complete grief. And then there's Hafez, who, you know, his son died before he did, his wife died before he did. He was, even though he was world renowned for his poetry, he had to, you know, leave his house and go live in the woods for a period of, I don't know, a year, because some fundamentalist person had taken over his town, and suddenly it was dangerous to be a Sufi. He had to go live in the woods and eat whatever he could eat. You know, it was too dangerous for him to live in his own house. I mean, that's so reminiscent of World War II to me. And yet he kept writing poetry. And I just think those kinds of suffering that people go through, somehow that breaking people's hearts, somehow lets poetry emerge from that. And I don't fully understand that. I just know that I see it over and over again. That to me is a mystery. You know, that suffering can create something so profound like Rumi and Hafez. I'm sorry, I feel like that's an inadequate answer, but it's all I have.
Oh no, it was most adequate. It was wonderful.
Great questions, y'all.
You know, Baba talks a lot about suffering and love. So the poetry that is, you know, elicited from love or from suffering,
Yeah.
both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
Baba used to say, stand up and sit down at the same time. I find a lot of Baba in that, love and suffering, and yet somehow one's totally inadequate without the other, and so on.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if many of y'all know this. I have a museum exhibit about Native Americans, and I, in particular, went and interviewed elders, Native American elders and spiritual teachers. And one day I went to the Hopi Reservation, which is considered the most respected and the most revered of all of the tribal people here in the United States. And I befriended this elderly woman who, whose uncle was the chief of her village, and she lived in this house with no running water, no toilet, and all the water was in a big trash can, the big metal trash can, and she would cook in the stove outside in the courtyard, whether it was snowing or not. They would bathe out in the courtyard, and she had a dirt floor. And I said to her, she had no electricity, and I said, you could have these things if you wanted them because they are in the village, but you have chosen not to have them. Can you help me understand why? Because I was just floored by this, you know. And she just seemed so happy and content, and like she didn't care. And she said, well, you know, it's a saying among the Hopi that if we have everything, then we might forget that everything comes from God. And so we feel that it's better to have little, so that we are really deeply appreciative of everything we have, and so that we remember to ask God for help. And I just thought, you know, it just made so much sense to me. That's a mystery. To me, that's a mystery. Great questions, y'all. Thank you.
I thought
This has
I'd read
been
a
such-
poem of mine that's about suffering that I just recently found in a
Yes.
letter to someone else. Is that all right?
You wrote this, Raine?
Yes.
Oh, when
It's-
did you write it?
I have a collection of guzzles on a CD called Grin and Gulp. They're mostly about the environment or Coleman Barks or other poets, or grinning and gulping in the disastrous environmental issues that we have. But it's still a Baba CD. It's called Grin and Gulp. I think you'd enjoy it, but I'd probably want to send you the the written out poems as well, because they're nicely written out. But I lost this one, and I had sent it to Sam Saunders before he died, my musician mentor. Francis was my poetic and Brabazon was my poetic and music mentor, but Sam was the one that taught me guitar and actually got me singing and not dancing. And this poem was in it, and I had forgotten about it, but I didn't find my poem. I found his answer back to me, which said, that's exactly how I've felt my whole barber life. So then I'm thinking, how did he feel and what is he responding to? So I'm shuffling through papers, and I did find, you know how with an email in the old days when you'd send it back, that which was formally sent was attached to the other email. And so here it is. And I've also used, so as he'd get into it, the first line of each couplet is a line of Francis Brabazon's. Would I was there. And my pseudonym's Rain Dust. This is not on Grin and Gulp because I just refound it. Would I was there. I guess I could say the beloved's bard was exalted, riding high on his huge tears waves way, especially compared to my measly few tears of squeezed faucet drips when they may. I could also borrow the suffered foray of so many years of in dust I sing. But in truth, my song is housed dust, grout dust, tile dust. I dwell there. My song's a cell phone ping. I never wake up at dawn in bliss with the dear hand of the girl with the rosy cheek. I awake in smog dust, see through cheap, dirty Venetian blinds, dim dawn sun doth peek. As for the exalted bard's roaring in his sleep each night, the beloved is all in all. All I dare say is, oh when, oh where, oh how to go to the beloved through this muck crawl. I once heard him express the great agony, my grief cannot be heard above the surf's roar. I can't imagine that sort of agony, as my grief is for myself as I strain to spot the beloved's door. Oh, so it's back to the plastic pen, the low writing table, and leave the finger slashing razor pens for the chosen ones. And for me, I keep trying my station's poor rhymes, which through partial suffering, I guess I have won. Oh, Rain Dust, what a mighty friend was that court poet who befriended you seemingly so very, very long ago. In the end, this beloved affair leaves the heart completely empty and rhyme's spirit lethargically slow.
Thank you.
Raine, what was the last word?
Lethargically slow. I think
Which describes me. Thank you.
Every now and again, it's great to sort of hop into ourselves, you know. And I had been very, very sick with zoster, which Barbara had, cranial shingles, facial shingles, for 6 months. And just all I could do was look out of the Venetian blinds, and I couldn't do anything. And the dust was gathering on them, and everything seemed, when you have a virus, as you know recently, Tracey, and it takes your body over, you do feel dirty. You do feel invaded. And I had not had that experience with that before shingles zoster. And but I didn't find this poem, which is on, you know, the old style of emails that attach themselves to a letter. And I was really glad I sent it, because I could send it to his wife, who one can imagine, with a husband who notated all Brabazon's work and wrote hundreds and hundreds of songs and guzzles. He's gone. He's just gone. And she said, oh, I'm so glad you sent that to me. All these spiritual people around me, and I just can't make contact with anything, because she's still grieving these 5 years. And it just appeared out of nowhere. I don't remember writing it.
Oh, wow. Interesting. I loved it. Thank you so much for sharing it. I really appreciate that.
I have your email, Tracey.
Yes, you do have my email. I emailed you a couple of weeks ago about
That's
a conversation we had. Did you get that email?
Yes, I did.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I'm so glad.
Because the Kabir Night of Poetry, I was one of the asked people to sing a Kabir Gungata Priya. I was asked to sing a Kabir song, and I did a presentation. But on the presentation was Ashima. She used to be Ashima Shrivastava, Dr. Ashima Shrivastava, and she had made a presentation where she had gone through all of those Mandali Hall tapes that are on the Mandali Hall site, hundreds of them, and she had picked out a whole meeting and keyed it in with Mani and Erich's small translations of like couplets and lines and quatrains. So I'd like to send on to you. They're a gem, and she did all the work for us.
Oh yeah, I've heard good things about that Kabir session. I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to see it. I'm looking forward to seeing it, and maybe we could do a Kabir evening here if you'd like to be part of that. That would be lovely.
Lovely.
Yeah, I'm a big Kabir fan.
Yes, the reason I went on there is that a friend of mine, actually he's Steve Klein's first cousin, and he's a Sikh, a Western Sikh. And when we were learning all the Kabir at Aliapur Khan College, bhajans, he went and photocopied their sort of Bible, the love songs of Kabir. And I have a photocopy of that book by Das.
Yeah.
And so I had read a couple of things out of it. And I mean, I felt after Ashima had presented all this stuff by Erich and Mani, it was like, oh boy, where am I going to go from here? But unfortunately, I had that book on hand to get my confidence back.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing it. I'm sure it's lovely. I've heard great things about that evening, which I completely missed. Yeah, nice. I feel like we should probably, in honor of everyone's time, end our evening. But it's been so lovely. Thank you, especially Priya, for being up in the middle of the night. You get the commitment award.
Like I said, I was already up, but thank you. Great. So lovely to be here. Thank you so much
for your contributions, to everyone. Thank you for your contributions. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Jai Baba.
Keep feeling better.
Thank you, dear.
All of you guys.
Yeah, all of us. Right. Yeah.
See you in the